Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to talk about some of the little dribs and drabs of news about 3.11 Harvest expansion that have been released over the last few days. So this hopefully will bring you up to date with everything that's known now, but not including anything that was in the original announcement. So there's been a few changes to Timeless Jewels, and I wanted to start with a Divination card that's been revealed here. Now, just from pure speculation, the fact that it shows the tree and the roots underground really gives me a vibe of the Petrified Forest Delve biome. You've got something that's underground. This is on the card for a reason. So I'm going to take a guess that this Divination card will be locked to the Legion Monolith encounters in the Petrified Forest biome. And it'll grant you a Timeless Jewel, a unique one. So these are the jewels that were introduced in Legion that basically val a section of your passive tree, quite a large radius around where they go. And there's been a number of other changes to Timeless Jewels. So I want to cover those quickly first. So with the Timeless Jewels, they do a couple of different things. The first thing that they do is that they change every small node in a large radius. And these, depending upon the specific Timeless Jewel, they may get changed into something that's better than what was there before. They might get changed into something that's different and often worse, and they might get changed into something that is completely and utterly useless. So the 5 Timeless Jewels function a little bit differently in that way. However, the real power that they have is often tied up to what they do to notable nodes and what they do to keystones. So keystones are the biggest nodes on the passive tree, and those get transformed deterministically. So if you use a Timeless Jewel, wherever you put it, it will have the same effect on all of the keystones in radius. And this is why you'll often see builds that look like they have no reason to consider taking Avatar of Fire, actually selecting Avatar of Fire. It's not that they're selecting Avatar of Fire, it's that they've got a Timeless Jewel in range, and that's turning the Avatar of Fire node into something else. Now, some of those nodes are changing, some of those special nodes, and they can be really, really good. Here's a new one, Supreme Ostentation. This is a totally new Timeless Jewel keystone. So, it has 2 effects. You ignore attribute requirements, and you gain no inherent bonuses from attributes. So inherent bonuses from attributes, that means that the bonus that you get from strength, every 2 points of strength grants you 1 life, as well as some melee damage bonuses as well. Those go away. However, you can completely ignore all requirements for attributes that are found on either skill gems or that are found on various pieces of equipment. Now, normally, attribute requirements are only a minor nuisance, and they don't make up for the incredible power that you gain from, well, not even incredible power, but the modest power that you gain by, for instance, having 300 strength. That's 150 base life. 150 base life, if your tree has 150% more life on it, then instead of 150 life, you're actually getting 2.5 times the benefit of that, 375 life. That's not a joke. That's a modest benefit to your character that really is meaningful. However, it's generally not a good idea to stack enormous amounts of stats unless your whole build is built around doing so. But enter some of the unique items in the game that have extraordinarily high attribute requirements. So I want to start with Zephy's Heart. It's one of my favorite items in the game. You'll notice it has this line, items and gems have 50% increased attribute requirements. This is the smallest of the this is the smallest of the attribute requirements that you'll see here. And what this means in practice is that where normally you might need 200 in attributes at sort of most, with Zephy's Heart you might need to push 280 or 300. Zephy's Heart rewards you with incredible power with the Soul Eater for 20 seconds when you use a Veil skill. It's a fantastic item, but this drawback is really significant. Now, if you are to take Supreme Ostentation, if you were to allocate this on your passive tree, which will require considerable investment to get it, because you'll need a Timeless Jewel to even put it on your passive tree, and then it's going to mess up a whole section of your passive tree. So there's a lot of investment in it, but you are going to gain quite a considerable reward because you're going to be able to use Xerxes' Heart with no concern for this obnoxious line. Next up is Mjolnir. Mjolnir is one of those weapons that has been really, really good in the past and is sort of just okay now. But basically, it causes your attacks, when you hit with them, to trigger socketed lightning spells, but it has a considerable drawback. 300 increase to intelligence requirement and 200 increase to strength requirement. It's already a gavel. Gavels already have a really high strength rec. And so you need to build your character around 412 strength and 300 intelligence. This is a really severe drawback. And this is keeping Mjolnir out of the main meta at the moment. However, in conjunction with our new node, Supreme Ostentation, maybe it is time for Mjolnir to shine. Mjolnir is not as good as it used to be, but it could still be quite good. And this combination is something that looks quite interesting. But the big one is Garb of the Ephemeral. This is a unique item that can only drop from the Cortex, which is one of the hardest unique maps in the game. But it has some truly incredible stats that are gated behind this really difficult 600 strength and intelligence requirement. So, and because it's a Savant's Robe, it's 752 int that you need. So you really need to invest tremendously in stat stacking in order to use this. So it's a huge cost normally to fit this onto a build, but you gain quite a lot of little bonuses with it. So, nearby enemies can't deal critical strikes. That's a powerful defensive layer. Now you have this divinity section where basically when you hit an enemy, you gain a divine charge. They don't do anything on their own, but then once you get up to 10, which you can get up to 1 per second, so in practice it tends to take maybe 12 or 13 seconds to actually cap these out, you will then gain a buff called Divinity. And what Divinity does is it makes you larger, deal more elemental damage, take less elemental damage, and you're immune to curses. All in all, this is a pretty strong piece of kit that isn't seeing much use at the moment and hasn't seen much use for a while because of partly because it's hard to get your hands on, but the main reason it doesn't see much use is because the strength and int recs are ridiculously high on it. So, Supreme Ostentation is coming to a timeless duel near you. I don't think you should take this unless your build is designed around one of those unique items, but if it is, it's a powerful option to consider. We'll come back to Essentia Sanguis later, and to the other Divination cards. Transcendence is another new timeless duel keystone, and this one is a mathematical problem of sorts. So, it has 3 effects. 2 of them are drawbacks, 1 of them is a very powerful defensive layer. So the first drawback is the obvious one, -5 to all maximum elemental resistances. So, this means that if you are not using the unique chest lore weave, you're going to be taking considerably more damage from all sorts of elemental effects. However, armor applies to fire, cold, and lightning damage taken from hits instead of physical damage. So this is essentially 2 lines. One is a drawback. Armor no longer protects you from physical hits. And the second side of it is a really powerful defensive layer. Armor protects you from fire, cold, and lightning damage from hits. Now, when you take a hit, the way that armor works is really quite convoluted in this game. Armor provides very significant protection against small hits, and provides very minimal protection against large hits. So if you're hit for 10,000 damage, and you've got an armor of let's say you've got 50,000 armor, without actually running the numbers and checking this, I believe that will absorb about 4,000 damage from that hit. So you'll take 6,000 physical damage. Now, what this is going to do is make it so that if you were to be hit for 10,000 fire damage, you will instead take 6,000 if you've got that amount of armor. However, the interesting thing here is that the attacks that kill you with elemental damage tend to be a lot of small hits in rapid succession. The most dangerous of all is probably getting a pack of Frostbearers or something like that. And you stuff up and they all go off when you're in the middle of them and you just go splat. With Transcendence, you're probably going to be able to tank things like that. And that's because armor is incredibly good at mitigating small hits. So where before I mentioned that 50,000 armor will drop a physical hit from about 10,000 down to about 6,000, 50,000 armor on a physical hit of 3,000 is probably going to drop it to about 500. It's going to absorb almost all of that damage. And so that means that if you're caught in a pack of bearers, Transcendence will keep you alive. On the flip side, it's not going to do very much if you stuff up a volatile, one of the big volatiles from the Nemesis monsters. I'm interested to see how people use this. I think in general the other Keystone Divine Flesh is probably better, the Timeless Duel Keystone Divine Flesh, but I think this is worth at least playing around with. The big drawback is the fact that armor loses its ability to mitigate physical hits, and that if you've got enough armor for Transcendence to be meaningful, then you probably are absorbing a lot of physical hit damage and just not really noticing it. I'm still interested to see it though. I think it could be quite good, and particularly it's another reward for armor that is a little bit different to other ones that exist. Lastly, there's these changes to Timeless Duels. These nodes, which have been previously on Timeless Duel exclusive, are going onto the normal passive tree. So you have the Agnostic. Your maximum energy shield is 0, and while you're not on full life, you sacrifice 20% of mana per second to recover that much life. That's an enormous amount of mana, of both of mana burnt and of HP gained. The Agnostic is quite difficult to use, but is really powerful in conjunction with the either with a build that requires no mana to function, or in conjunction with the Flask Lavinia's Spirit, which causes all of your skills to cost no mana while you're using it, and also recovers a lot of mana. It's difficult to use, and it's not used very much as a result, but it's not weak. Eternal Youth, 50% less life regen rate, ouch. 50% less total maximum recovery per second from life leech, ouch. But energy shield recharge instead applies to life. So this is a very difficult balancing act between your life and energy shield recharging, but it's something that can provide you quite a solid recovery in combat, at the cost of hurting some of the more popular ways of recovering life in combat. Glancing Blows is really good, and this basically spreads out the effect of blocks. So instead of taking no damage from blocked hits, your chance to block is doubled, and you take half damage when you block it. When you block a hit. This is a really powerful defensive layer because it mitigates spike damage. Next up we have Supreme Ego, which is very, very, very niche. It allows you to only use one aura, but you get 50% more effect on you, and you're burning 50% more mana to do so. Yeah, it can be solid, but it's very, very, very niche. Then we have Wind Dancer, which is an interesting setup for evasion characters. And again, this is coming onto the normal passive tree. 20% less damage taken if you haven't been hit recently, 40% less evasion rating if you haven't been hit recently, and 20% more evasion rating if you have been hit recently. Essentially what this does is it makes it so that the first hit that you take is less painful on an evasive character, and then subsequent hits, whilst they're still as dangerous, they're less likely to happen. However, that first hit is more likely to come. So it's a balancing game, but Wind Dancer is a powerful defensive layer. So that's all of the changes that are happening around Timeless Duels. Lots of things that are still to come out, because I think that we're seeing five Timeless Duel Keystones retired to the normal passive tree, and 5 new ones being added as Timeless Duels. So we've seen what Transcendence is, we've seen what Supreme Ostentation is, but there's likely to be 3 new ones that we don't yet know. The next thing that I wanted to discuss is the Divination Cards for dual-influenced items. So we have Prometheus's Armory, and we have A Familiar Call. So, With Prometheus's Armory, you're going to receive a random one-handed weapon. It'll be item level 100, and it will be 2 influenced, but with a random combination of influences. It'll be rare and unidentified, and we don't yet know how strongly biased towards getting influence mods it will be. It's possible that it will be guaranteed 2 influence mods, it's possible it will be guaranteed 1, and it's possible that there'll be no guarantee. All of that's really up in the air. Depends on how they decided to make how to make it function when you're identifying a double influenced item. Because double influenced items cannot be created in the game at the moment by any means other than using an Awakener Orb. Now, first thing people often see when they see this, or think when they see this, is, oh wow, this is giving you a free Awakener Orb, and it's not. The Awakener Orb does 2 fundamental things. The first one is allow you to create a double influence base at all. But the second one, and this is its more powerful use, is allowing you to very strongly target a combination of 2 specific mods onto a rare item. So for instance, if you were to want to craft a set of boots for a lot of characters, the way that you would tend to do that is to take one set of boots that's got Tailwind on it, and another set that has Elusive on it, and then you combine them with an Awakener's Orb. The target isn't so much getting a base that is capable of simultaneously rolling Tailwind and Elusive. The goal is that the Awakener's Orb always gives you Tailwind plus Elusive on those boots. On the flip side, you're going to see a lot of pairs of mods, pairs of influence sets together on items that are going to have no real synergy. So for instance, you can imagine an item that has the Warlord's, a weapon that has Warlord's fire damage mods in conjunction with Redeemer cold damage mods. There's just no synergy between those two. Or perhaps Crusader physical damage mods in conjunction with Redeemer cold damage. Again, no real synergy there, and so that's going to end up being pretty much a wasted base. However, these are going to pose interesting crafting puzzles because there are going to be extremely weird niche cases in which some of these combinations can in fact be used. And I think this card is going to be one of my favourite ones to turn in the new league because it's going to pose a real puzzle. When you turn one in, is there anything that I can do with a wand that is simultaneously, say I get a Tornado wand, that is simultaneously Shaper influenced and Warlord influenced? Can I find a combination of stats that item could roll that is worth persisting with the craft on? What about if instead it was a Redeemer and Elder influenced Gavel? Can I find a use for that? And I think that often the answer is going to be no, but sometimes the answer is going to be yes, and that will be interesting to see how exactly it plays out. The other thing that will be interesting is seeing how the game decides to handle identifying double influenced items, because I do think Cirrus should drop double influenced items in general. He doesn't. He only drops single influenced ones. I think it'd be interesting to see that happen. Next up, we have a Familiar Call, which is a very similar divination card, except it's much more specific. So this is jewelry. You'll notice that it is of Feral. That means that it's going to have the Feral aspect crafted on it. I think for most people, that's going to end up being pretty much a non-factor. You generally speaking don't want to start a craft with an aspect. It's usually the very last thing you add to an item if you want an aspect at all. However, this is still a very powerful base. This will be a Shaper and Hunter jewelry base, so depending upon your luck, it could be a ring, it could be an amulet, and it could be a belt. As I say it, this base will be powerful for any time that you get any of the following. If you get any amulet at all, this will be good. If you get a ring that is a resist ring, or an opal ring, or a coral ring, this will be reasonable. Opal Opal rings are definitely the best things you could get, but I expect they'll be quite rare. Steel rings, on the flip side, steel rings I don't think have that much synergy with the Shaper and Hunter mod pools. Generally speaking, steel rings, you tend to want them to be Elder. However, there will certainly be uses for a steel ring that is Shaper influenced or whatever. So those will be hits. From a belt perspective, I think essentially at the moment there are 3 belts that are worth wearing on most characters, and a side case in which the 4th is available. I don't think this will be able to get you a Stygian Vice, which is the best belt in the game. Leather belts are considerably weaker, but do sometimes see use, and crystal belts are very, very, very strong, but crystal belts would tend to want to be Crusader influenced. So if you hit a crystal belt with this, it is still a hit. If you hit a leather belt with it, it's sort of a hit, and heavy belts see some use as well, although they're definitely weaker than the other options. They're less popular than the other options. Any other belt, and you've basically turned in a dud of this set. I do think that most people that turn in sets of this will ignore the fact that it's got the Farrell craft on it, and will just roll something else on it because aspects are very easy to craft. If you make an item that needs an aspect added to it, it's very easy to add it later. Although that said, maybe in solo self-found, that'll be a useful way to get an aspect craft. Last thing I wanted to talk about is Essentia Sanguis. This claw has received somewhat of an overhaul, and it's one of those things that's a little tricky to see exactly what's going on because the mods are sort of vaguely similar to what they used to be. So, Essentia Sanguis was changed a while ago. It used to be an eye gouger. Eye gougers were fast attacking and life gain on hit claws. Essentia Sanguis was also awful back then because the lightning damage was much lower. But it was changed to a Vile Claw. Vile Claws have a couple of things about them. Firstly, physical damage leached as life is a much weaker implicit than gain 50 life on hit. Although Essentia Sanguis has some synergy with it now. And then, additionally to that, they are very slow attacking bases. I think that the Vile Claw is a 1.25, it's 1.30 attacks per second, whereas the alternative of an Eye Gouger was 1.50 at APS. So, Essentia Sanguis is staying a Vile Claw, and I think that that's going to kill this item off and leave it pretty much a dead on arrival rebalanced version of it. Anyways, let's go through what it's doing now. So it's got 174% increased physical damage, which is within the range it used to roll. Adds 1 to 200 lightning damage, which is exactly what it used to have. It still has this 8% chance to block attack damage while dual-wielding claws, which is all upside. 23% IAS, which is within the range it used to be able to roll, and a buff to maximum energy shield. Now, where it used to say leech energy shield instead of life, this is changing to energy shield leech effects from attacks. Well, firstly, Ghost Reaver, which is leech energy shield instead of life, but maximum total recovery per second from energy shield leech is doubled, 50% less energy shield recharge rate. 50% reduced maximum recovery per energy shield leech. So this means that your energy shield leeches last, I believe this means that they last half as long as they otherwise would. So each instant, leech is a really complex mechanic in Path of Exile, but basically the way that I tend to think of it is that if an effect says you're leeching 2% of your physical attack damage, then you will regain 2% of the damage that you deal. So let's say that you deal 1 million damage to an enemy, 1 million physical damage. You will then get a heal over time effect on you that will heal you 20,000 damage. That's 2% of the physical damage that you did with that hit. That 20,000 damage that you'll be healed will trickle into your life pool at a rate of 2% of your maximum life per second until it's all consumed. There'll also be a limit on how long any individual one of these sort of tricklings in of life can heal you, and there's also a limit to how many can work simultaneously. It's a complex mess, but essentially what this is doing is it's giving you this fantastic line here. Energy shield leech effects from attacks are not removed when at full energy shield. This is very similar to the effect that the Slayer Ascendancy gets for life, where life leech instances on you sort of keep going after you hit full life. So this is an energy shield version of that. Now, the key thing that this is explosively powerful with is energy leech support. Energy leech support causes supported skills to leech your life, but also supported skills deal up to 24% more damage while on full energy shield, and also 39% more damage while leeching energy shield. So if you're both simultaneously at full energy shield and leeching energy shield, energy leech support is doing a hell of a lot for you. I'm not exactly sure how I'd go around building around this. One of the things that's really difficult with Essentia Sanguis is the fact that it's dealing both physical damage and elemental damage at the same time, which generally speaking is not particularly strong. It's very hard to scale. Like, neither of these damage pools is amazing. Physical damage, we've got, this is only 7% quality, so it'll be a bit higher than these damage numbers. But let's say that we're dealing an average of 120 damage per hit, and we're swinging 1.6 times per second base. That's a base of 192, maybe 200 physical damage per second. And the elemental damage is pretty similar as well. It's a little bit lower. So, we don't have extraordinary physical DPS or elemental DPS, and it's very difficult to scale both of them at once. If it was possible, then to scale multiple damage types really effectively at once, then the unique weapon Rebuke of the Vaal would be one of the best weapons in the game, possibly the best. You could try and convert the physical damage into lightning, but that ends up in a situation where you're still just not dealing all that much of it, because this claw is just not a high DPS weapon. However, the energy leech support synergy might make up for some of that. I'm interested to at least brainstorm this further, although I don't think it's going to get there. If I was going to build around this, I'd be inclined to take a skill that scales lightning damage. And this might even be as simple as using Awakened added lightning damage support to amp up the damage that this claw does, and then try and use it in conjunction maybe with that ridiculous chess piece that was revealed that causes your nearby enemies to have reduced lightning, or to have their lightning damage overridden and set to equal yours. So their lightning resistance. So you could conceivably run minus 60% lightning resistance using the other mods on that armor to keep you alive. That's Doriani's prototype. And then hit with Essentia Sanguis, pretty much ignoring the physical damage. It's there, it's all upside that it's there, but except for on physical reflect maps. But you're basically scaling the lightning damage. That's my first thoughts on it. I'm just not convinced that's all that great. So who knows? Maybe someone will come up with something better than I can think of at the moment. Anyway, that is it for the information that's been revealed so far. If you are keen to keep an eye on the various spoilers that come out, there's a couple of spots for them. There's the Path of Exile subreddit, is really good. And there's also this thread on the Path of Exile forums where Bex from Grinding Gear Games is continually updating and putting on all of the new items that are being revealed. Anyways, if you've got any comments or questions, fire away below. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have a good one.